Hi, this is Doug Vogt from the Die-Hole Foundation. Again, I'm looking forward to doing this video on the Hebrew alphabet because it complements the video series one on the physics and the science level of the theory of multidimensional reality. In fact, it somewhat proves it because it's the product of a highly advanced previous civilization, which you're going to see in video series 2, B, C, and D. But anyway, this one's going to be on the background history of the alphabet itself, what alphabets were available at the time of dear sweet Moses. And then what the legends of the Jews say. Some of them, I think, legends were originated by Moses. And then finally, how many letters were in the Torah? Was it just the letters of the Ten Commandments, or the whole 304,805 letters or symbols? And correcting a academic theory that the Torah was written over 700 years and finished off by Jeremiah. I'm going to try to do this all in 30 minutes. Good luck to that. Anyway, my background and why you should be watching this. Like I mentioned in the introduction video, I'm the first person in 2,600 years that found the real Mount Sinai and all the altars that Moses mentions in Exodus and Leviticus. Even the well that Abraham dug and his son Isaac redug found everything. I figured out all the code systems that Moses had used. That's in my book called Moses and the 10 Code Systems. A few I'm going to touch on this video because in order to explain the number of letters, you have to know that. But you'll understand it. And for the scientists, well, for the theologians, obviously this video is extremely important because it answers some questions that you were not taught in seminary or in yeshivas. And it's intended for both Jews and Christians. I think you'll get a lot out of it. Don't feel threatened by it. There's no way you could have known some of this stuff, especially when I get to video 2, B, and C. It's just don't feel bad about it. And don't feel threatened about it either. For the scientists, even though this one is not really dedicated to the science part of the videos as 2, B, C, and D are, this will give you an idea of some of the clues that the legends give, and also what I figured out, that is an indication that this is not a normal book. This is really something else worthy of your attention and study. In fact, I make a prediction: once you understand what this book really is, you're going to study the Hebrew letters more than any yeshiva student ever did. For the layperson, we've all been taught various things about the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament, specifically the Torah. Now you're going to understand the hidden secret and really why this book is truly holy, and is not for the reasons you think. Anyway, I'm hoping to correct some of the lies and misconceptions that were presented in academia over the last hundreds of years. Anyway, let's get started. I'm going to be teaching from chapter 4 of God's Judgement and chapter 1 of Moses, creation of the Hebrew alphabet. Anyway, what I intend to get out of this thing, and what I want you to understand, is one that the Hebrews deserve the credit for the creation of the alphabet. There's no question about that, because you'll see from the form of the letters, which will be covered in the next video, that how it came about, how he got it. He didn't design the letters or anything like that. So anyway, I think you'll enjoy it a lot, and you're going to learn a lot, more than you could ever in seminary or cemetery, fraudulent slip maybe, or yeshiva. Okay, first is the alphabets, or I really call them alphabets, the writing styles that existed at the time and before Moses. We have cuneiform. These are actually cuneiform tablets from Tel El Armana in the Amenhotep IV, who later changed his name to Akhenaten. He's the pharaoh at the time of the Exodus. This is Egyptian hieroglyphics, only some of them. This is what the letters represent into English letters and stuff like that, soundings. So, here we have, there's one theory that was published in an article called Earliest Alphabet, a Canaanite Invention, published in Biblio-Archaeological Review, July, August of 1984, pages 46 through 54. Now, the reason I bring it up, it's one of those slanders. They can't bear the idea of giving the creation of the alphabet to the Jews. God forbid. They may die, you know. So, this was published here. And these are the symbols, and they say this is the proto-alphabet. It isn't. This is an example of extremely bad scholarship. I mean, an idiot could have looked this stuff up and known immediately that this is really variations on the Egyptian hieroglyphics. Of the 18 letters, I identified 17 of them. This, I have no idea where this guy was coming from. A plus sign? Anyway, we'll start in. 1, the calf. Parts of mammals. This is the Egyptian shape. 208 variations of it. Rope. 134 variations of rope. 4, I think this is a club. Warfare, hunting. 155 variations. Animals, amphibious animals and reptiles, 146 variations. That looks like a snake to me. What do you think? This is definitely a fish. Fish, parts of fish, 32 variations. Agricultural and professions, 156 versions. Now, this is the only thing that looks like a shin, but you'll see the shape, the view from the toroid, which I don't have in front of me right here, that you'll see the shape. But this could be a farmer's fork, you know, a pitchfork. This is the letter N in Egyptian, no question about it. Cow again, we don't know what this was all about. Parts of mammals, 208. Various geometric shapes, I got 3 of them here. 41 variations. Crowns and dresses, that looks like a crown to me. What do you think? This is the eye. That was the letter R in Egyptian. Parts of the human body, 381 variations. Parts of mammals, again, the cow. Parts of human, a human head, 381 versions. A fish again, 32. God knows what he was thinking here. This is not the hexagrams or trigrams from China. Unclassified, 93 variations, or a KH. The Orthodox Jewish interpretation of the tradition is that Moses brought the gift of writing to mankind. But they had no way of proving it. I'm going to prove it to you. Certainly in video 2B. This is just the background stuff. Okay, what we know about the Torah. Okay, when Moses came down from Mount Sinai. Now, I have the great advantage of actually finding the real Mount Sinai, and I know roughly where the cave entrance is, and I know where he got this thing from. So basically it was the family burial cave. He came out of it, came around. When he comes and he explains what he found, this was in the Torah, in Exodus 32, 15 through 16. And Moses turned and went down from the mount with the 2 tablets of testimony in his hand, and the tables that were written on both of their sides. On the one side and the other were they written. And the tables were the work of God, and the writing was the writing of God graven upon the tablets. In other words, he didn't come up with the design of the letters, and the sequence of letters, which is the writing, he didn't do either. He just took them out of the cave, deep, deep in the cave. There's 7 legends of the Jews about the Torah and the alphabet. And they're very interesting. They're actually clues to what this document really is. I want to read it to you for those who are watching this from a cell phone. I don't think the resolution of this is going to come out on your cell phone. First, the Torah was written before God created the earth or the universe. The Torah was created 7 days before the creation of the universe. By the way, the reason the number 7 is a clue to Mount Sinai. That's why the number 7. You'll find out that later. God already had the Torah with him in the form of all the letters before he created the world. But the letters were combined into words only afterwards, forming the Torah as we know it. Key thing, it was a string of symbols. They weren't letters until after he gave sound values to them. 304,805 symbols. Now, sometimes I say letters, sometimes I say symbols. That's what it is. There's no word breaks. He had to create the Hebrew language from scratch. Anyway, there's really no vowels. I mean, 2 of the letters act as like vowels, Vav and Yud, but they had to create on only during the Mesozoic period, which is about 600 AD, did they create the dots and the dashes above and on the sides and below the letters for vowels. They had to memorize it. That's why they had singers. They had to memorize blocks of the Torah. That's why they have singing. Remember, your right brain can remember singing and long documents better than left brain. So anyway, by the way, the scientists and computer scientists will totally agree with this once you understand what the Torah actually is. 2, all the words and all the actions of all the worlds are contained in the Torah. Again, they'll understand that maybe better than the theologians. The scientists will, once you understand what this thing really is. But it's true. So far, true. 3, the Torah is the book of life. That's a code, a clue to what that toroid shape really represents. The Torah is the cause of the world's creation and also the power that maintains its existence. That's absolutely true. Again, any computer programmer and physicist will agree with it 100% once they find out what this thing is. Another approach is, as long as God thinks the universe, it exists. Absolutely true. 5, to understand who God is, you must understand the Torah. No question, you can't separate it. You really can't separate it. You'll understand why by video 2C. And the only book you can compare it to the Torah is the Torah itself, because there is no other book like the Torah. Once you understand what it is, they're right. 22. The 22 letters came from the fiery pan of God, and 10 of the letters fell from the fiery crown of God. This is an important clue. It's telling you that 10 of the letters are grouped together to make a shape that resembles a crown. And you'll see what it is immediately in video 2B. Okay, we'll start in. What we know about the Torah and what Moses received. First, you have to determine how many letters are in the Torah. In order to do that, you first have to know something about the theory of multidimensional reality and also the number of years between the geomagnetic reversals, which I discovered. And it is 12,068 years. This is an important number. And it's encoded through the entire Torah. And you're going to see an example of it right now. 304,805 letters or symbols in the Torah. The number of chapters and verses in the Torah is 6,034, and this is how they're broken down. That's half of 12,068. Moses left us a hash total, how to figure out how many letters are actually in the Torah. I should spice on the 2 tablets. So, the first clue is, I have to explain, before I get to that, I have to explain this. It says in the Torah, there were 603,550 Hebrew men that left Egypt during the Exodus. There weren't that many Hebrews there. This is a coded number, entirely. This is what it's made up of. 50 times my magic number, 12,068, is this. And I had 150 left over. You know, it took me about 6 or 7 months thinking about it. You know, why that number? And I already had figured out his code system, small number, large number, and I said, wait a minute. Maybe he's using cumulative small numbering on the name of God, which is Yod Hey Vav Hey. So Hey is 5 in small numbering. Vav is 6, Hey is 5, Yod is 1, it times it, 150. So basically Moses was saying he left Egypt with the knowledge of God and the clock cycle. So, back to our hash total. Number of letters in the Torah, you double it because in the two genealogies, everything's kind of repeated twice. Remember, he also supposedly brought 2 sets of tablets down. And so you double it. So it totals 609,610. Back to the hash total. Number of male Hebrews who left, 603,550. Chapters and verses in the Torah, 6,034. Number of letters in what we call the Torah, 26. Gee, it's the same number. How do you like that? I guess for all those who thought that Torah was written over 700 years, I guess you're wrong. We'll also get another surprise too, in a second. There was a theory that there were no chapters and verses in the Torah when Moses had it and they were only produced later. The next, we're going to cover the size and weight of the 2 tablets and see what's doesn't make any sense with this either. Okay, we've determined already that there are 304,805 symbols that we got, or Moses got. I had figured out the length of the sacred cubit, which is 24.136 inches. I'll cover that in greater depth in the book on the Moses and the 10 code systems. So, I figured out the size of the ark was basically 1.5 cubits turns out to be 36 inches by 36 inches, height and width, and the length was about 5 feet. So I knew the constraint, I assumed a couple of inches for the thickness of the acacia tree, acacia wood walls. So I came up with a size for a tablet of no more than 24 inches by 50 inches long. Okay, so we know the number of type. I used to own a typesetting company for 10 plus years. So I figured out backwards how to get that many letters fitting on 5 columns. Turned out to be point size 12 with a leading of 12. Now, 72 points is an inch, so the leading is about 1/6 of an inch. That'd be a 304 to 305 lines per column. And 50 symbols per row. So that's why they call it, the Torah is mentioned as a table, because it would look like a table, a bunch of lined up symbols in rows on these 2 tablets. So anyway, Moses at the time, this is late Bronze Age period, does not have the technology to produce 12-point type and 12 leading and do it within a couple of days or even a couple of years. You couldn't do it. Especially when you see how fine the design of the symbols are, there's just no way. Even if they found a diamond crystal, which is an octahedron, and they mounted on a bronze stylus, he could not scratch it into marble or the limestone, which the place is made out of. The limestone is a Jurassic and Cretaceous limestone. So there's no way. It has to be done with a laser. Even today we'd have to do it with a laser. And you have to understand that. So obviously that part of the story is wrong. Everything you saw in the movie The 10 Commandments, push it out of your head. It's not really right. Now, if someone would say, well, the tablets weren't that big, they were smaller, great. Then the point size has to get smaller, and you're stuck in the same pigeonhole. You can't explain it. The next is the weight of the tablets. Moses is 81 years old by the time this happens. Remember, at the end it's a year after the Exodus. He's 81. So you got 2 tablets that are 24 inches by 50 inches. And here's a piece of marble, and it's merely 3/8 of an inch thick. And it's 1 foot by 1 foot. This is 5.14 pounds. If it was 24 inches by 50, this sucker would be 43 pounds. And believe me, 50 inches long, this thing would crack. It would have to be thicker if it was going to be that long. That's marble. Okay. So he's got 2 tablets, and he's going to be hiking out of a deep cave. This is probably something similar to Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico, which goes on for 24 miles. So, and the Torah winds up saying he was there for 40 days and 40 nights. It isn't. The number 40 is a coded number. You'll learn that in the book on Moses' 10 code systems. It's reference to the chapter and verse total where the code of many colors is mentioned 3 times. Totals 40, 60, and 70. They're coded numbers. The 40 represents really 1. So it was 1 day into the cave and 1 day out of the cave. So let's say he's doing 8 to 10 miles one way and then coming out. Then he's going to go around the mountain another maybe a third of a mile to get to the embankment where they were embedded, were encamped, where the Ephraimites were. You think an 81-year-old is going to be carrying probably 90 plus pounds on his back? No way. You couldn't do it. They aren't doing it. So, you know, right off the bat, you're not dealing with something normal. We know he got the letters. So what medium was it that he was carrying? What did he get? I'll answer that in a few minutes. This is where the scientists, computer programmers are saying, okay, he's on to something. Okay. There's a legend about the tablets, and should start opening up your head to realize we've got something else going on. I think some of these legends were actually created by Moses and then carried down. It's the things he didn't want to put in the Torah because maybe he wasn't allowed to, or there just was no room. Or remember, he's stuck with a sequence of letters he can't change. So I'll read them. The tablets on which they were engraved. These were created by God's own hand and were made of a sapphire-like stone. Don't forget the sapphire color. Same description of the thing that looks like a chair that's in the middle of the Ark of the Covenant. Each of the 2 tablets are the 10 commandments, 4 times repeated, and in such wise where they were engraved that the letters were legible on both sides. Doesn't sound like stone, does it? For like the tablets, the writing and the pencil for inscription too were of heavenly origin. High technology, they didn't make it. All of the tablets were not more than 6 hands in length and as much in width. Right, I told you about 36 inches by 36 inches. I think they got confused with the actual size of the Ark box itself. And such. Okay, it is another of the abilities of the tablets that although they are fashioned out of the hardest stone, they can still be rolled like a scroll. We're not talking about stone at all. I think I determined that in the fact that Moses is not carrying about 90 pounds on his back for at least 10, 11 miles. He's not doing it. We're not talking about low technology here. We're talking about something extremely highly advanced. It goes on to why Abraham bought the cave to begin with and sold his sister a second time. It's because of what he found inside of it. Now, volume 1 is about Abraham and why he did it in the whole sequence. And I'll have a video on it, and I'll go through some of it then. I haven't created the video yet. Next is, Moses didn't drop the 2 tablets and break them. He dropped them, he didn't break them. He couldn't break them if he wanted to, because this stuff is probably made out of polycarbonate plus. God knows what else they put into this thing. So, now, there's a reason why I know it. Now, what happened, and I have it in volume 3 of the Exodus book, it'll be in video series 10. I took the place where, the verse where it said he broke the tablets, and I rebroke the sequence of letters, and it comes out that he dropped them And then he sat down and he saw what his stupid brother did. Anyway, I'm going to give you a little tidbit. It's in the Moses 10 code systems. Of the question is, who put the chapters and verses in the Torah? You're going to find out right now. After he sees what his stupid brother did, basically the golden calf, he winds up saying, commanding that all the Levites that worship the golden calf get killed. Nobody got killed. If his stupid brother didn't get killed, and he's the one who made the golden calf and nobody was forcing him to, is because, and I'll explain why, then nobody got killed. And this is the reason how Moses is telling us what's going on. He says 3,000 Hebrews, supposed to be a time symbol, I guess this program couldn't figure out the time symbol, times 24.136 equals 72,408, divide by 12, which is the 12 tribes, and you get, gee, look at that, 6,034. That's the number of chapters and verses in the Torah. He's telling you right off the bat, Moses is the one who created the chapters and verses. And the reason why he picked this number, I think he was told about the cataclysm, because it's loaded. The place is loaded with the number. But he couldn't say it overtly. So he winds up encoding the thing in there so many times, there's no way you could avoid that. There's something special about that number 12,068. That's important. It's really a scientific issue. Okay. I said I was at the real Mount Sinai. I found it all. Now you're going to see it. This is a ridge up here, about 25 feet above. This is where the encampment was, where the Ephraimites were encamped. Here's the wadi. There's the wadi also on the other side of it. This is where Aaron's altar was, right there. You're going to see a better picture of it in a second. This is where the golden calf was, the west of it. And there was like 5 fire pits along this ridge line. It's so when they were working at night, they could find their way back to the camp. That's my guess on that. This is the Aaron's altar. There's the wadi. These grids are every 2 feet apart. It's about 18 feet by 18. We gridded it. I photographed the whole thing. We even did a slit trench through it. We found a bunch of stuff inside of it that dated it. This is the remains, again, on this side of the platform where the golden calf was. It's about 5 feet and about 3 feet. And it was, again, the rocks, same unhewn rocks, and they put dirt on top. It was a clay plus the gravel and sand. That's why it looks different from the other surrounding area. It's about the same dimensions of the ark, so his jealous brother built the platform where the golden calf was just about the same measurements as what the ark was. And as Moses said, he destroys the thing and throws it to the wadi. About 4 feet away is the edge of the wadi. There's the edge of the wadi right there. So Moses gave very good clues for it. Hell, nobody figured it out except yours truly. Now we're going to handle the last part, which is it's basically those who hated Jews and the Jewish religion so much, they wanted to do everything they could to take away and defame what the Torah was. They did their best, and that includes some in the Jewish religion too, with historical relativism and you know who you are. This is a gorgeous painting by Rembrandt. Now there was an artist. Anyway, I'll go through it. The theory is that this guy wrote Deuteronomy because some of the words used in it only showed up after 800 BCE. So they attribute it to him. Their poor scholarship is they don't understand that the prophets were the priests and they had a given name when they were born. It took me about 11 months to figure all of them out. And I went all the way from the first temple period and a little bit before to Jeremiah. They had a given name. They had a priestly name roughly when they got 20 years old and they went to the priesthood. And then if they were the eldest son and the father was the high priest and died, they would become the high priest. and they would adopt a prophet's name. I figured all of them out. Two of them actually had two identities for a reason. So, the story behind the thing is that the temple was closed for about 15 or so years when a bad king closed the temple down. Then the good king, his son, came along, and I think it was Hezekiah, and they find a book of Moses lost, probably buried by Solomon, because there's things in there that Solomon did not like. And they hand it to the scribe, and his scribe's name is Shaphan. It's mentioned 15 times in Jeremiah. Guess why? Because that's Jeremiah's given name. So much for their scholarship, huh? He's the one who did the translation. He didn't write it. He had to take a string of symbols, and he had to wind up making word breaks out of this thing. And he did the best he could. And probably the best that we could ever do also. And that's what it was. That's what happened. He's the guy who did the translation. He did not write. I wonder how many PhD theses I've just destroyed. I hope many. Now, there's a way to prove that I'm right. There's a technique that the spy agencies throughout the world, I'm sure, certainly in the United States, does to see if someone wrote a document. Everybody has their own vocabulary and the words that they use, except for proper nouns and place names, that will be different, obviously. So there's a technique called where you take all the letters and you, by chapter, you determine whether a letter is different above or below by a certain standard deviation percent. So here's Brave New World, 213,000 words, and looks pretty simple. Quite simple. Here's Moby Dick, almost 700,000 words, and only two words were, a couple places where it were above a standard deviation of 2 compared to the rest of the document. Now, the reason I mention this is there's an alleged scholar in Australia who's trying to fight and show that the letter skips of telling the future was nonsense, and he compared letter skips in Moby Dick with the Torah to see if you can get prophecy out of that too. I don't go along with the you can tell prophecy with the letter skips. You can tell that Moses actually created words from letter skips in the Torah. He did that in the Garden of Eden story and naming certain foods and plants and stuff like that. He did that. But the other thing, no, and the reason is there's too much flexibility in the Hebrew alphabet. And you can start having the same sequence of letters, but you could add vowels to it and make it a totally different word. That's a red flag, something's wrong. I mean, it's something different here. So here's Moby Dick, and I got 2. Now we'll get to the Torah. Here's Genesis. A bunch of letters, 5% standard deviation from the norm. It's all over the place. Exodus, also real word. Doesn't look like a normal writing, does it? Leviticus, again, same thing, up to 5% standard deviation. Numbers, 6 of them. Deuteronomy, the subject of what we're talking about, 5. And there's a difference, there's a slight difference between here and there. There is a change in here, but for a different reason than what anyone had thought, and I discovered it only later, even after I wrote the book. But I'll explain it in the video. Here's the book Jeremiah. And I know this part, around chapter 40 to 50, was written by his grandson Baruch. Because he was in jail. He was in prison. But it doesn't look anything like really Deuteronomy. See, it's different. He's got a lot of proper names in here. That's probably why some of this sounds like that. Now, I wanted to see if there's anything unique about the Hebrew language that would get kind of a crazy pattern like that, like it's not like an English book. And here's Ezekiel, and I know this is written by Baruch, as I said. It does change from here when the prophecy section, it less proper names in there, but you can see it's only 3 things as high as a standard deviation of 3. This is an assembly language program. I didn't include the numbers. If I did and gave the numbers letter values, it'd probably be closer to the book numbers and Leviticus, but this looks more like the Torah than anything else. And that may be, for those computer scientists out there, a bell may have gone off into your head. So here's a comparison again of Jeremiah with Deuteronomy. I'll get out of the way. They're not really the same. It's not the same author in any way, shape, or form. Even though this I know has 2 authors, this is different. So, anyway, that's the end of it. The next video I'm going to cover the science philosophy behind the creation of the Hebrew alphabet, numbers, the actual shape and form of the toroid, and how I got to that stage. The model I created is the toroid. I'm going to cover all 22 letters and the views you see, and then finally the 3 shapes that the 22 letters form. That fills up that whole video. That's it. I thank you for watching. I'm sure you got a better education than you ever got before on this subject. You're going to learn things that basically they don't teach in seminary because they just don't know. I don't blame anybody for not knowing this stuff. There's no way you could. Because like I said before in other videos, you cannot figure out the Torah unless you come in through the science side of it. There's just no way.